So typically you want to stray away from anything that's in a major key and or scale, especially the key. For whatever reason, you know, you can have a not so great scale, but if you've got a minor key, it typically will be close enough. And there's a lot of different scales out there, and you know, unfortunately not many traditional pagan scales. There's two different types of pentatonic that I know of. There's the Native American pentatonic, and then there's the old ancient pagan style pentatonic. What I'm finding most often is that unless it has the ability to do half steps, the Native American style pentatonic has got all the wrong notes on it. So unless it has the ability to easily do half steps, it's not going to work for ancient pagan music, unfortunately. The traditional pagan pentatonic had all of the minor notes that you needed without doing any half steps. So that's the, in a nutshell, the difference. But you know, I know what it's supposed to sound like, but I personally don't know how to make one. And so unfortunately a lot of people are in the same boat as me, and if you want to find a flute like that, you're going to have to, you know, purchase it somewhere from somebody else that makes it. And nowadays most people do not make those kinds of scales anymore. Nowadays, if you do see pentatonic, like I said, it's Native American or sometimes Asiatic scales, but you know, it's really difficult. You could be searching many years and still not find it. I'm doing an experiment. I've actually ordered two that may be in that, if it's not exact, it may at least be close to that more ancient pentatonic scale, but I won't know till I get it. So I just kind of want to give you background here before I get into this, but basically, you know, it's something that you don't want to have to resort to your typical major scales and keys, and yet, you know, a lot of times that is the only thing you can find. And let's face it, you can't always wait many years, you know. Especially, think of it this way, a lot of those flutes can still work. They're just not ideal. They can still work, and it can teach you how to play. You can learn off of it. And when the right ideal one comes along, you've already got some knowledge under your belt, you know, because you've already been practicing with something similar. There's a couple that I'd say are the most diverse, and I guess to one's own opinion at a certain point. But there's a couple major keys that actually are not half bad, that are extremely broad and diverse. C major, I was told once that C major actually, in the diatonic scale, was like the main thing that people put their songs, that's the main key and scale that people use. I don't know if that's true or not. I really, you know, I just heard that once, but it kind of makes sense because even C major is a bit of a chameleon, and it will contour to your energy. You can do a lot of different energies on C major, which I was surprised about. D major is the other one. D major you find a lot in a lot of Irish reels and things, and really that kind of makes sense because their music, whether they like it or not, their music is at least in part influenced by Odin pagan music, whether or not they know it. It has changed a lot, but you know, so I'm going to bring out two. One is D major, diatonic, the other is C major diatonic. They are perhaps two of the most easiest flutes that you can find, that are readily available, that you can find pretty much anywhere. If you just go on Etsy or eBay or, you know, whatever, I mean, you can find them like anywhere. There's something to be said about the other ones. You know, I wouldn't say it's my first choice. E, I really want to experiment more in E major because I haven't gotten the chance to. Most of the E stuff that I have is E minor, but I really like that E minor and E flat especially. But I really haven't had too much experience with E major to tell you on that one. F major, G major, and I'd say those two are kind of tied as the runner-up to D and C. And then your worst possible option would probably be A major. It's like nails on chalk, especially when you combine it with when you combine it with the very common diatonic scale. So I'd say, you know, stay away from that, in my personal opinion, because it doesn't have the right energy. And B is not that great either. Again, some of it is just your personal preference, because you're looking at stuff that isn't supposed to be for this. It's not technically, it's not a scale and or key that we would have used. But you kind of just make it work, and really part of making it work, half the energy comes from the flute, half the energy comes from you. And what you have to do is, you cannot, I mean, yeah, technically you could force a flute that's in a major key to play minor, but when you're forcing something that's designed for something else to play something that it's not meant to play, it really, the energy is going against you, because you're forcing it to play something. It won't sound as welcoming, it won't sound as full, because it wasn't designed to do that. And it's much easier if you just allow it to play what it would naturally be designed to play, you know. So if you use a lot of minor, you know, scales and keys, it makes sense to preferably get one that's already in that minor key. That being said, you know, like I said, certain keys do work because they can at least provide you with some of that energy. You just have to kind of, you're limited on what you can do with it, but it doesn't mean you can't do anything with it. You can still do quite a lot with it. So I think the first one that I'm going to bring out is D. D major, and we're going to compare these two. We're going to compare the way that they sound against one another, just the overall energy of it, kind of what I call the voice of the flute, the personality, if you will, is a lot of it is determined by the key that it's in. So it really does affect it. And it's, by the way, it's a lot easier, instead of trying to do some kind of strange, you know, balancing act. It's a lot easier, you know, fingering wise, if you just, you know, get one that's already in that key to begin with, so that whatever you're playing, you know, it's just straight up and down, and you don't have to do a crazy balancing act to get the scale. Okay, so that's the other reason, by the way. But this one is a bit finicky at times. It's, I believe it's plumwood, and that is a bit finicky. But this one is, I mean, it's not terrible. It's just, you know, if I could have chosen a D flute, I probably would have gotten something in it. That's the other thing. Each individual species of wood, like species of tree, You know, there's ash, there's oak, there's, you know, walnut, there's maple. They all have their kind of different sound to them. And plumwood is not my favorite, but it works, and it's just, again, personal preference. Right now this is the only D major that I have, so if I ever find one that's in a different wood, I might get it, or I might not, because I'm not that keen on major anyway. But we're gonna play this now and tell you how that sounds, and then compare it to the C major at the end. So that one is D major, and now we're going to do C major. And this one is the C major, and that's the one that I was talking about, where it really has a lot of different energies that you can do with it. It just kind of molds to whatever you are putting forth into it. And unfortunately, if you haven't noticed by now, I'm not a professional player, you know, I'm still a beginner, and so I don't want you to think that what I'm doing is the only thing that these flutes can do. They can do a lot more at this point than I can do. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. You know, I can only play good enough to give you an idea of the overall energy. I can't, unfortunately, show you everything that it'll do. And by the way, both of these are double octave. So when you're looking for something that's got 2 octaves, you know, they won't all have 2 full octaves. Some of them will only have 1.5 octaves. Some of them will only have 1 octave, but more often than not, it's anywhere between 1.5 to 2.5 octaves. So if you want the higher octaves, just make sure that it says that on what you're buying, because they don't all have that.